Beneath the vaulted ceilings of the Vatican secret archives, where shadows clung to ancient stone like secrets, a brittle manuscript emerged from the dust of centuries. Its cracked leather binding bore no insignia, only a single Latin phrase, etched in tarnished gold: ab initio ad finem, from the beginning to the end. Father Matteo Rossi, a Jesuit scholar with ink-stained fingers and a mind honed by years of dissecting heresies, traced the words with a reverence laced with unease. Rome's autumn light bled weakly through high clear-story windows, gilding the air with motes of parchment and dread. The document, unearthed during renovations to a forgotten crypt, had landed on his desk with a whisper. "Authenticate this," but its contents now screamed. Line by line, Matteo's pulse quickened. The text catalogued popes with chilling precision. Lumen in Caelo, for Celestine II. Ex undarum benedictione, for Pius XIII. Each title mirrored their reigns like a divine epitaph. Yet as he neared the present, the ink darkened, the script, jagged as claw marks. There, beneath Benedict XVI's Gloria Olivae, a nod to his monastic roots, the manuscript diverged, a new entry, raw and urgent. Petrus Romanus, Pastor Novissimus, the final shepherd. Reign, in diebus illis, the days of woe. Matteo's throat tightened. The Church had long dismissed Saint Malachy's 12th century papal prophecies as medieval forgery. But this was no copy. Carbon dating placed the vellum in the 1100s, and the Latin syntax bore the fingerprints of a mind fluent in scripture and terror. He leaned back, the chair creaking like a confessional door. Outside, tourists milled in St. Peter's Square, oblivious to the fissure splitting history. The archive's silence thickened, broken only by the rasp of a turned page. How? The implications coiled around him. If authentic, the manuscript didn't merely predict, it ordained. And if the next pope truly heralded the end of days, then the conclave's next vote wasn't an election. It was a countdown. Matteo's hand trembled as he photographed the page. The flash ignited a spectral glow in the ink, as though the words themselves resisted exposure. Somewhere in the labyrinthine stacks, a door groaned shut. He froze. The air tasted metallic, like storm-charged ozone. For a heartbeat, the archives seemed to breathe, a low, resonant hum beneath the floor stones. Coincidence, he told himself. Yet as he fled into Rome's twilight, the prophecy clung like a shroud. The Church had buried this for a reason. Now, its resurrection threatened more than faith. It fissured the very boundary between divine will and doom. The manuscript's final line haunted his steps home. Et in fine, lux moritur. And in the end, the light dies. In the damp, candle-lit solitude of a 12th century Irish monastery, Malachy of Armagh knelt on frigid stone, his prayers interrupted by a vision that would fracture his faith. The year was 1139, and the air reeked of peat smoke and impending storm. Shadows writhed on the chapel walls as the saint's breath fogged the silence, until a searing light split the dark. Visions cascaded. 112 pontiffs, each branded with cryptic epithets. Ex Castro Tiberis, from a Tiber castle, for Urban Feufur, builder of papal fortresses. Flos Florum, flower of flowers, for Paul VI, whose coat of arms bore 3 lilies. And finally, Petrus Romanus, Peter the Roman, the last pope, whose reign would end amidst the wolves of a crumbling world. Malachy transcribed the prophecies in feverish Latin his quill splattering ink like bloodstains. Yet when dawn broke, he buried the scroll beneath the altar, his journal confessing a chilling doubt. These words are not from God. They came from below. Centuries later, the Vatican dismissed the prophecy of the popes as a 16th-century forgery, its accuracy too volatile for faith. But whispers lingered. How had religio depopulata, religion laid waste, eerily foreshadowed Benedict XV's reign during the 1918 Spanish flu? Why did John Paul II, the labore solis, sun's toil, die as a solar eclipse darkened Rome? The Church branded it coincidence. Conspiracists called it code. Then Father Matteo Rossi found the journal, tucked inside a false reliquary in Avignon's archives. Its vellum pages reeked of myrrh and mildew, a scent of holy rot. Malachy's script, once orderly, degenerated into frantic scrawls. They speak to me in dreams, voices like serpents, in ash. They say the shepherds will fall, that Rome will drown in its own hymns. Between lines, Matteo spotted sketches, a seven-headed beast, a chalice overflowing with vipers, and a map leading to a cavern beneath Armagh Cathedral. The key, Saint hadn't received a vision. He'd stumbled onto something, an older, darker testament, buried long before Christ's birth. The journal's final entry froze Matteo's blood. Burn this. They are coming. The last pope is their vessel. Outside, a raven hammered its body beak against the archive window, as though Malachy's warning had clawed free of the past. The prophecy was no forgery. It was a key, and Matteo had just unlocked a door the Vatican had sealed for 800 years. Rome's moonlit catacombs exhaled the chill of buried secrets as Father Matteo Rossi and Dr. Elena Marchetti descended, their flashlights carving fragile paths through the dark. Elena, her leather jacket reeking of Turkish cigarettes and defiance, smirked at the Jesuit's trembling grip on Malachy's journal. "Relax, Padre. Heretics dig deeper than this." The cipher they'd cracked pulsed on page 112, a serpentine string of Coptic symbols overlaying a map of St. Peter's Basilica. "Sub altare papale," Matteo murmured, beneath the papal altar. Not a metaphor, a tomb. Above ground, the Vatican's marble facades gleamed with sanctimony, but beneath lay a necropolis of forgotten truths. They found the chamber at 3:33 a.m., the witching hour's zenith. The air tasted of wet earth and myrrh, the walls etched with frescoes that made Elena curse under her breath. A hooded figure, pastor in umbra, the shepherd of shadows, loomed over popes and peasants alike, his crook splintering into 7 serpents. "Early 14th century," Elena whispered, her gloved finger tracing the pigment. "Painted during the Avignon papacy, when the church fractured. Coincidence?" Matteo's flashlight shuddered. No. The shepherd's face, though faded, mirrored the Ordo Custodum Veritatis emblem sewn into the robes of Cardinal Voss, his superior. The Ordo, guardians of truth, had shadowed Matteo since the manuscript surfaced. Men in plain clothes tailed his walks through Trastevere. Confessionals hissed with coded warnings. Last week, his apartment was ransacked. Malachy's journal left untouched but mocked, a raven's feather pinned to his pillow. The poor Ordo didn't burn books, they buried them. And now, as Elena pried open a rusted iron door, its hinges screaming betrayal, Matteo understood why. Inside, a sarcophagus lay veiled in cobwebs, its lid carved with the same 7 serpents. Elena's breath fogged the air. "This isn't Christian. Look!" The inscriptions were older, Phoenician curses and Sumerian star charts. Malachy's journal had warned of something older, but this was a reliquary of primordial dread. As Matteo deciphered the glyphs, his Latin faltered. Abyssus invocat abyssum. The abyss calls to the abyss. A sound ruptured the silence. Boots on stone. The Ordo had found them. Elena slammed the journal shut. "Move!" But Matteo froze, his light catching a skeletal hand protruding from the sarcophagus. Clutched in its grasp, a scroll sealed with wax the color of dried blood. The Shepherd of Shadows' final secret. Above, a bell tolled. Somewhere, a pope dreamed of wolves. The manuscript's final pages crackled like desiccated bone beneath Matteo's trembling fingers, their ink pooling into a nightmare mosaic. Petrus Romanus. The name thrummed with sacrilege. A pope who would kneel not to God, but to chaos. Moonlight bled through the Bibliotheca Apostolica's stained glass, casting dragon-shaped shadows over the text. Matteo deciphered the symbols with a scholar's precision and a sinner's dread. A seven-headed beast, its maws gaping over cities drowned in flame and flood. "Climate collapse," Elena muttered, her breath fogging the vellum. Or AI, Skynet, with a halo. But the next glyph stole her cynicism. A blood moon suspended above a shattered ziggurat labeled Babel. "They're not metaphors," Matteo whispered. Satellite images on his laptop told the truth. Methane geysers rupturing Siberia, drones swarming Kyiv, a new arms race blooming in the Mesopotamian dust. Babylon had risen, and its tower was nuclear. The prophecy's timeline unspooled like a hangman's rope, 2035. The year climatologists warned of irreversible permafrost melt, when AI would eclipse human cognition. Matteo cross-referenced dates. The manuscript's Eclipse of the Shepherd, aligned with NASA's solar flare forecasts. The Vatican's own scientists had buried reports of polar jet stream collapse, their graphs mirroring Malachy's apocalyptic zodiac. "Coincidence is a lie told by the fearful," Elena had sneered. Now, even she paled. In the manuscript's margins, a sketch gnawed at reason. Petrus Romanus enthroned, not in white, but in ash-gray vestments, his tiara replaced by a circlet of thorns and microchips. Behind him, a shadow, the Shepherd of Shadows, gripped his shoulder, its face a void. "He's a puppet," Elena hissed. "The real power's the Ordo. They're engineering the prophecy to control the collapse." But Matteo's gaze snagged on the throne's base, where tiny script spelled ex inferis, from hell, not engineering, summoning. Midnight found them in Elena's loft, maps and madness papering the walls. The seven heads took form. The drowning lion, Venice submerged by 2030. The silent hive, AI blackout in Sao Paulo. The burning wheat, Ukraine's breadbasket ablaze. Key, the hollow mountain, CERN's Hadron Collider retooled for AI worship. The serpent's coin, Bitcoin mining draining Arctic aquifers. The glass desert, Sahara solar farms melting into silica storms. The unmarked tomb, Vatican's secret nuclear bunker. Each head a sin. Each sin a countdown. Matteo's phone buzzed, a notification from the Pontifical Academy of Sciences. Permafrost methane. Levels had just spiked 400%. Outside, a storm lashed Rome, lightning fracturing the sky into a jigsaw of divine wrath. The manuscript's words echoed in the thunder. "When the beast's seventh head rises, Peter will deny the light. Elena lit a cigarette, her hand steady, but her eyes wild. We're not deciphering a prophecy. We're reading a blueprint. Somewhere, beneath them, the earth groaned. The air in the hidden chamber was a claustrophobic soup of decay and sanctity, the walls sweating with the breath of 17 centuries. Matteo's headlamp flickered as he stepped across the threshold, its beam slicing through darkness that had outlived empires. There, at the chamber's heart, a skeletal figure slouched on a throne of black basalt, its bony fingers clawing a scroll sealed with wax as blue as drowned flesh. Elena inhaled sharply. Enochian script coiled across the parchment, its glyphs shimmering with a bioluminescent sheen. The language of angels, she breathed, though her tone suggested something less divine. Above them, a mosaic sprawled across the domed ceiling. Dies Irae, the day of wrath. Christ's face was absent. In his place loomed a faceless entity, its form a vortex of shadows, one hand crushing a papal tiara, the other gripping the wrist of a kneeling pope. Petrus Romanus. The scene pulsed with heresy. This wasn't prophecy. It was an indictment. Matteo's crucifix burned cold against his chest as he unrolled the scroll. The Enochian text writhed under his gaze, its translation a blade to dogma. Malachy did not foresee. He pleaded. The journal's fragments coalesced. In 1139, the saint hadn't received a vision. He'd unearthed this chamber during a pilgrimage to Rome, its horrors searing his mind into prophecy. The scroll's final lines tore the veil. The shepherds will martyr the flock, unless the retard crook is splintered. The throne is a tomb. The tomb is a door. Elena's flashlight jerked to the skeletal figure. 4th century, she muttered, brushing dust from its scapular. The fabric disintegrated, revealing a sigil beneath, a raven gripping a key. The Ordo's emblem. They've known. For 1,600 years, they've known. The chamber wasn't a relic. It was a confession. The Church had buried Malachy's warning, weaponizing his terror into a narrative of inevitability. Petrus Romanus wasn't destiny. It was a test, a chance to shatter the cycle. The mosaic's faceless entity seemed to ripple, its void-like countenance reflecting modern cataclysms, AI autonomies, methane plumes, the static hiss of disinformation. Matteo's mind reeled. The Church's greatest sin wasn't secrecy. It was surrender. By framing apocalypse as divine will, the Ordo had ensured passivity. But Malachy's scroll screamed rebellion. The throne is a tomb. To seat Petrus, Romanus was to kneel to annihilation. To reject him was to ignite reformation, or schism. A sound shuddered through the chamber, stone grinding on stone. Above, the Vatican stirred, unaware its foundations trembled. Elena pocketed the scroll, its glow seeping through her jacket like a wound. "They'll burn us for this," she said, grinning like a woman already aflame. Matteo knelt, not in prayer, but defiance. The skeleton's hand crumbled at his touch, releasing a final secret. A coin-sized medallion, etched with Malachy's raven. On its reverse, a single word in Aramaic. Choose. The Sistine Chapel's frescoed ceiling, once Michelangelo's Ode to Divine Order, now loomed like a storm cloud over Pope Ignatius as he clutched the prophecy's list. His arthritic fingers traced the names Lumen in Caelo, Gloria Olivae, until his own trembled at the penultimate line. Petrus Romanus loomed next, and with it, the Vatican's obituary. Outside, Rome seethed. Methane sirens wailed over the Tiber. AI-generated deepfakes of cardinals declaring God is code trended worldwide, and the Ordo Custodum tightened its grip. Ignatius's last act would be a confession, or a war. The conclave convened at midnight, crimson-robed cardinals filing into the chapel like specters. Among them, Cardinal Altieri, his cassock frayed at the hem, a reformer who'd smuggled food to climate refugees in Marseille. Opposite him, Cardinal Voss gleamed in silk watered with hidden gold thread, his smile a scalpel. The air hummed with collusion. Matteo and Elena lurked in the Sala Regia, hacking into the chapel's ancient intercom. "They've rigged the ballots," Elena hissed, her screen flashing with proof. Voss's encrypted orders to elect a puppet pope, a Petrus Romanus in all but name. Matteo's voice crackled through hidden speakers, echoing Malachy's scroll. "The throne is a tomb!" Cardinals froze, their piety crumbling to panic. Voss lunged for the altar's emergency lever, a relic from the Inquisition repurposed. The chapel's oak doors slammed shut, bolts grinding into stone. Lockdown. The vote would proceed, but no soul would leave until white smoke rose. Or blood. Elena's drone feed pierced the chaos. Outside, Ordo agents stormed the apostolic palace, their Glocks blessed by a rogue bishop. Inside, Altieri pressed a fist to his pectoral cross, its chain biting flesh. "This conclave is a sin," he roared, tearing his ballot. The chapel erupted. Prayers became curses. Mitres flew like shrapnel. Above, the Last Judgment fresco seemed to writhe, Christ's raised hand now a fist. Ignatius staggered to the IUC altare della cattedra, his pallium drenched in sweat. The prophecy demanded a martyr. The scroll demanded a rebel. In the shadows, Matteo's eyes met Elena's. "Choose." A gunshot splintered the air. The gunshot's echo clove the chapel's sacred hush. Pope Ignatius, crumpling against the altare della cattedra, scarlet blooming across his cassock. His final breath hissed not a prayer, but a decree. The Ordo dissolves. Cardinals recoiled as Matteo lunged forward, Malachy's scroll aloft like a torch. "The prophecy isn't fate, it's a test," he roared, the Enochian glyphs writhing under chapel lights. "Choose unity, or let the throne bury us all." The dying pope's hand twitched toward Cardinal Altieri, his gaze a silent plea. "Burn the old world. Build anew." Outside, St. Peter's Square seethed with pilgrims and paramilitary, their chants for Pietro Secondo merging with the wail of distant sirens. Inside, the conclave fractured, traditionalists clutching rosaries, reformers brandishing smartphones, streaming methane geysers and AI riots. Cardinal Voss lunged, his blade glinting, but Altieri intercepted, the weapon sinking into his shoulder, instead of Matteo's heart. Blood pooled, dark as the scroll's ink. "Enough," Altieri gasped, his blood staining the ballot box. "We vote. Now." The tally was swift, desperate. White smoke curled at dawn, but no sun rose. Instead, a blood moon hung low, its copper glare drenching the loggia as Altieri emerged. Pope Peter II, his name a thunderclap. The crowd stilled. Even the wind held its breath. Matteo's grip tightened on Elena's arm. Petrus Romanus, the prophecy's final pope, or its subversion. Ignatius's corpse, laid in state below, seemed to whisper, "The light dies only if we close our eyes." The Tiber's oily currents swallowed the moonlight. As Elena scrawled her final entry, by the dim flicker of a votive candle, her journal's pages stained with river mud and dried blood. "Prophecies are riddles," she wrote, the nib tearing through paper. "Written in the ink of our own fears. Solve one, another blooms. Hydras of the human soul." Behind her, Rome's skyline bristled with cranes rebuilding the Vatican's facade, white marble masking the rot within. A moth spiraled into the flame, wings igniting. A tiny apocalypse. Beneath the Ponte Sant'Angelo, where Nero once drowned Christians for sport, a figure emerged from the water's embrace. Gloved hands retrieved the Enochian scroll, its glyphs, undimmed by weeks submerged. The Tiber's filth sluiced off the vellum as though repelled, revealing the seven-headed beast coiled in the margins, its eyes now glowing faintly, a dormant virus reactivated by touch. The figure's sleeve slipped, exposing a tattoo. The beast replicated in scarred flesh, one head crowned with a papal tiara, another with a neural chip. Elena's candle guttered out. Across the river, a child's laughter echoed, pure, oblivious. She closed the journal, its spine cracking like a sacrament. They'd traded dogma for doubt, a pope for a question mark. Yet the scroll's retrieval whispered a darker truth. Malachy's nightmare was never theirs to solve, but to inherit. The prophecy had simply shifted hosts. Somewhere, a server farm hummed, its algorithms chewing on the scrolls digitized. Curse. A cardinal's ringtone played Dies Irae, and in Elena's silent flat, the mosaic's faceless entity watched from a photograph, its void deeper in the dark. The end is only the beginning.